Hello everyone, this is going to be my course presentation for the bike sharing information system. So first of all, I'm going to go over a brief overview of the system. So the bike sharing system will be made up of a series of bike stations with bikes that will allow customers to rent them for a fee. So each bike station will have a set number of bikes that are available to rent, and each bike station will also keep track of the number of bikes that are available for a customer or customers to check out and which ones are actually out and rented currently. And then the information system will also have a fee that is charged to a customer based off of how long they've actually rented the bike for whenever they return it, and also whether or not they are a yearly subscriber or if they have subscribed just for the day. So kind of a brief, kind of high, or more, I guess, kind of down in the weeds overview of how I see the physical architecture working for this is a customer comes in, rents one of the bikes from the bike kiosk. That information is sent to a kiosk switch. So there could be obviously more than two bike kiosks. There's probably going to be many bike kiosks around the city. And they'll be sent to a kiosk switch, so there could be multiple ones, but this is kind of a low-level view of it. That information is then sent to a router, where it will send the information to a server switch, and then also will more than likely send it to a cloud backup. So there'll be multiple copies of the data that's sent. The information for the bike info will be sent to the kiosk info, bike info server, which will basically house the information of when the bike was checked out, when it was returned, the time it was checked out, and the time it was returned. And then there will also be a billing server, which will obviously be a very highly secure server with very limited access to it, so that there is a very low amount of risk for that billing information to get out, as well as the database server, which would house information on customers, like how long they've rented a bike for, how many bikes they've rented, yearly subscriber, user ID, stuff like that, contact info. So the billing server and the database server obviously really need to be the more secure of the two because it houses very sensitive information. So I have the system organization being set up of three smaller systems: the bike renting, the user management, and billing. So the bike renting process will include the physical hardware of the bikes, so the bike stations and the kiosks, and the card readers that are on the kiosks. The user management system will utilize databases to store the information for each user. So there'll be a database server right here, and then there'll be a billing server. And there'll also be, obviously the kiosk bike info server. And the user management system, which will utilize databases to store the information for each user. The billing process will use software to read the customer's credit card and process the payment. So that'll obviously read that, go to a kiosk switch, route it, and then obviously there needs to be another spot here where it sends the billing information out to the necessary billing parties. So the process will also use databases to store the payment information of the customer. Also, there's going to be information for security. So security is obviously a large concern for many organizations these days with all of the rather public security breaches that have taken place. Recently, even I just read in my hometown here of Kansas City that there was a breach of the local grocery store chain Hy-Vee, where some of their marketplace grill, their and gas area, like they had card readers that were hacked, so that billing information got out. So luckily, I hadn't really used those before, so I only used their in-store grocery store payment, which actually wasn't affected. But obviously, that's just another example of security being a large concern for a bike sharing company. So breach of the billing system due to a ransomware or another external threat would be a huge disaster for the company. That would hurt the company's overall like their standing. It obviously anytime a security risk or security breach happens, it hurts people's view of the company. It would also hurt because they would have to actually go in and possibly take down the entire service for maintenance, or take it down until they've gotten the malware out. They'd have to validate how many accounts were affected. If billing information got out, probably have to hire a third-party system or a third-party vendor to come and help them track down. They probably also would have to obviously send that information off to the authorities so that people could track it there. So for security also, there also needs to be a well-defined list of who can have access to what, because internal security is obviously also a large problem, because there could also be people within the company, disgruntled employees, whatnot, or employees that are just looking to sell stuff online for money. So they need to keep the databases that house the sensitive information separate from many of the employees that don't need the access to it. So operations employees would probably need access to some of the billing stuff so that they would be able to validate customer information, but they would also need to have some sort of system in place so that they could validate that the person they're talking to is the correct person. They probably also just need to only have view access as opposed to read and write access. the database systems themselves would be the only ones that really need to have any sort of read-write access. Database admins wouldn't really, they would just, initially set it up, get the software in place to actually, read the billing information and store it in the database. So there really only needs to be very few, if not any people that need to have any sort of access. Definitely no read-write access. And then there also needs to be probably physical and then other sort of access, like access restrictions, so that people can actually take that data, store it off-site, and then sell it or send it to themselves via an email, something like that. So there also needs to be a lot of restrictions on what can actually be downloaded or who has access to the physical devices themselves. So the major tasks that I see for the bike sharing infrastructure system before it can be deployed is obviously, first of all, the initial infrastructure of the servers, the switches, needs to be determined, like how big, how many switches they need, how many routers, who their vendors are going to be, how many maybe PCs there need to be. So they need to purchase those devices and then installing the necessary software. So they need to determine what kind of software they're going to use, what kind of what kind of computer software they're going to use to process the billing, what kind of computer software is going to keep track of what's been checked out, what bikes are available to rent, that sort of thing. After that, there needs to be an installation of the bike stations at the proper locations. Next, there needs to be the communication network, because obviously the bikes are not going to probably directly connect to a switch on the location that they're at. There's going to be some sort of fiber or Wi-Fi connection or copper connection going back to a site that's going to have a connection to the switch, which will then transfer that information to where it needs to go. After that, they need to set up the databases for each system, including the database server for the customer information, the billing database, and the database for the kiosk info and bike info. Next, I believe they need to define the roles for the departments and set up the applicable access based off of what roles have been defined. So operations associates have access to certain pieces of the system and have read-write to certain pieces or edit or view-only. Database admins have a certain one. Information security has certain access, and obviously keep track of who has physical access to the areas and who has physical access to the servers. After that, I believe that they need to run obviously a test scenario or run a beta of the system to validate what's working, what's not, work out the kinks, work out any software bugs, stuff like that. And then I think once the system has been confirmed to be working, then start allowing maybe like a beta for users to validate that users' information is processed correctly and that there's no kinks in the tracking of the bikes and what's available and what's not. There's no kinks in the billing, anything like that. Once all of that is working, I believe the system will be allowed for open release for everybody to use. So that's kind of how I view what I believe the information security or the information system for the bike sharing system would look like. Initially, there's it's becoming quite popular with the different bike companies that are out there that are bike sharing. So I believe it's becoming a popular system, and that is how I believe the implementation and system overview, security, and whatnot will work. Thank you for your time.